Hello everyone, and welcome back to episode 2 of my ongoing series, Beginner Basics, a series focused on passing across the information, tips and tricks learned from hours of play to current and prospective new players. When starting a new, competitive game, everyone can use a helping hand, and that is what this series is here for. With that said, let's get on with the show. Last episode I covered operator roles and playstyles in Siege, and here I'll be moving on to another core aspect of Siege multiplayer, which is reinforcing, and its counterpart, breaching. These are integral parts to every Siege match, indeed every Siege round, as when defending, it is your responsibility to reinforce correctly in order to prevent easy entry from the attackers through unreinforced, soft walls, and counter to that, as attackers, it is vital that you can breach through soft and hard walls alike, by bringing the right operators to the table. See my previous video in the series where I cover the rather important offensive roles of soft and hard breaches, which can be found in the playlist to the right of the video if you want to watch that. So let's start with the defenders. As a beginner, if you have played any game of Siege, you will likely have noticed your team immediately step to on defense and start reinforcing walls around the objective site, and sometimes even off-site. So where should you be reinforcing? The accurate answer to this is wherever will be helpful. However, that is a very vague answer, and as a new player, you likely won't know where will be helpful in the first place. So onto specifics, starting with the more obvious locations. Reinforcing around the site is always a safe bet, and will likely take up the majority of your defending reinforcements. Turning these soft walls around a site into hard walls is particularly helpful because it narrows down the number of locations that the attackers can use to enter the site, outside of the use of hard breaches. This is extremely useful as it means that as defenders, those staying on site and anchoring will have a much easier time of it, as they will only need to watch the remaining soft windows, doors, and possible walls that might still exist. This is a boon for the team, as the longer the team anchors stay alive on site, the more time everyone else will have to do other helpful things. As vital as reinforcing the main site is, this does come with a couple of caveats. The first of which is that if you're playing the bomb game mode, which has 2 separate objective sites, try your best to avoid reinforcing between the 2 sites. This is vital for a couple of reasons. First, it is very common for the defenders to open up any walls between sites in bomb in order to enable easy movement around the general objective area whilst the sites are untaken. Second, if a site does get taken and the defenders need to retake it, having a reinforcement to hide behind will actually help the attackers far more than the defenders. Therefore, as a general rule, if there is a soft wall between the 2 rooms where the sites are located, try to avoid reinforcing that. The second caveat is extremely specific, but still relevant, and is focused entirely on the operator Mirror. She is an extremely powerful defender who often, not always, but very often, places her see-through mirrors in hard, reinforced walls on the site, and then leaves a soft wall next to the hard wall that she used for the mirror. This lets her, if she sees anyone through her mirror, possibly kill them really easily by shooting through the soft wall next to the mirror. Therefore, if your team does have a mirror, do try to keep an eye on where she is in the setup phase, as you don't want to make her life harder than necessary by leaving no soft walls for her to shoot through. And fair warning, people do tend to get quite pissed as mirror if you don't take them into account when reinforcing at the start. Outside of those 2 caveats though, reinforcing around the site is pretty damn vital. Moving on, you will also want to reinforce hatches, specifically those that are above the objective sites. Naturally, if you have an objective on the top floor of the map, there won't be any hatches to really worry about. Reinforcing hatches is important as it means that a random soft breacher won't be able to open a hatch and potentially get a nice angle on any anchors on site. The only time you won't want to reinforce hatches will be in order to help the aforementioned roamers. This is because there will be times where a roamer will want to use an impact grenade to open a hatch if the site does get taken, in order to expose the attackers defending the diffuser. Given that the roamers often reinforce hatches anyway, if you're not roaming, just leave it up to them to decide, unless you really feel that a hatch, if broken wide open, will just destroy an anchor on the site. Now that we've covered when reinforcing the main site and hatches might be a good idea and when it might not be a good idea, let's move on to more obscure locations for reinforcements. This is getting a little advanced, but it comes under the purview of this video, so I figure why not dip into it briefly. There are times when you, mostly as a roamer, will want to reinforce walls some distance away from the site. Typically, these are locations that, if held, will really slow down the attacker's push until they do clear that location. Maybe it's a room that watches a large portion of the map, or maybe it provides an angle covering a possible entry point into the site. By saving a reinforcement or two for these specific locations, you can really make your life easier when trying to hold that spot, which in turn buys more time for the defenders. But this is fairly advanced, as it requires you to know where attackers go to push specific sites, and this in turn requires a lot of experience and map knowledge. So if you are new, I really wouldn't worry about this last point. Just keep your eyes open when playing and see what your teammates do, and if something works, remember it for future use. So, with defenders and reinforcing out of the way, let's move on to the flip side of this particular coin, which is attackers and breaching. When attacking, where do you want to breach? Again, the accurate answer to this question is wherever is helpful, but that can be hard to figure out as a new player, so I'll try to boil it down into some easy to follow, rules or guidelines. First, by and large, breaching any wall, soft or hard, that leads onto the objective site will be beneficial to the attacking team. So if you're playing Thermite, one of the two hard breaches currently in the game, and you find a hard wall next to the objective site and are unsure of what to do, placing your exothermic charge and blowing open a hole there is probably a decent option at any point in the game. If you're by yourself, then you can try to get a couple of kills after that wall is gone, and if nothing else, can be quite a decent distraction, helping the rest of your teams get into better positions. And if you're with your team, then you can all make a coordinated push at that one spot and try to overwhelm the nearby defenders. Generally, however, I would recommend sticking with at least another person when playing as a hard breacher, as both Hibana and Thermite are extremely vulnerable to roamers when they are setting up their hard destruction gadgets. Many a time, I've died whilst placing a thermite charge or trying to get all my sticky pellets from Hibana onto a hard wall. Therefore, sticking with someone else so that they can watch you back is a decent idea. It's especially a good idea if the other team has a bandit, as his bandit batteries prevent your charges from triggering. Same deal for if the defenders have a mute. Therefore, if you can stick with someone like a Thatcher or Twitch, then you can guarantee that you will have at least a chance at blowing that wall up if you both survive long enough and get to use your gadgets effectively. If you are by yourself though and are facing bandit wires and mute jammers, do try and get creative with your play as a hard breacher. Maybe there's a soft wall you can shoot through to get rid of the defending gadgets, or a soft floor above the site, or even a soft ceiling below, or on specific really awful sites there might even be a barricaded window that you can shoot through. Survival is key when playing as a hard breacher. If you die early, then your team will have a much harder time taking the site. Play cautiously and do try to avoid exposing yourself to roamers if at all possible. Speaking of survival, ideal walls for hard breachers to target are those that can be breached from outside. This means that roamers will get revealed if they try and run out to stop you, and this makes your goal of exposing the site much easier and safer to accomplish. However, not all sites have this as an option, in which case falling back on breaching any wall leading onto the site is your best bet. Breaching reinforced hatches is also a pretty great idea if the objective site is not on the top floor of the map. This to a large extent is Hibana's specialty, as she can far more efficiently destroy hatches than Thermite can, as she can breach up to 3 hatches, whereas Thermite only has 2 charges. However, Thermite's charges can blow open bigger holes in walls than Hibana's pellets can, and so which hard breacher you favour for different sites can certainly make a difference. And because of their different specialties, sometimes bringing both Hibana and Thermite can be correct, if only for hard breaching redundancy. And there we have it, all the tips and tricks you'll need as a new player for reinforcing and breaching. We've covered where to reinforce, where to breach, why these locations, and safe play as a hard breacher. So coming up next will be information in Siege, and how it can be gathered and used. So feel free to leave a like or even sub if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that notification bell if you do, and I'll see you guys in the next Beginner Basics.